What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Scott Proctor, alongside my guy, Matt Morris, per usual. And we're back with another episode of Simple Question. But this time, we'll have more than one because we've got a special guest joining us once again, a senior NHL writer at Yahoo Sports, Justin Cuthbert. Justin, thanks for joining us, my man. How are we doing?
Not a problem, guys. I'm doing well, enjoying the playoffs so far, and always ready to talk hockey.
No doubt about it. The NHL playoffs have lived up to the expectations so far. Justin, you told us 3 weeks ago that the Lightning would beat the Leafs in 7 and that Andrei Vasilevskiy doesn't lose elimination games, point blank period, or even give up goals in them. That has continued, obviously, here recently with the Lightning sweep of the Panthers. Vasilevskiy is now 9-0 in elimination closeout games since 2019. In his last 7 series clinching games, he has 200 shots against. And Justin, I know you already know all this. 200 shots against in his last 7 series clinching games. He's given up just 1 goal. So simply, Justin, how impressive have the Lightning been so far to you? And is Vasilevskiy on his way towards earning the title of the greatest goalie of all time?
Yeah, I mean, I hope you boys made some money on that Lightning in 7 pick, because that was some good plus money there.
Was a play for sure.
But yeah, you guys are all right about Andrei Vasilevskiy. I don't know if he can cement himself as the greatest goaltender of all time, but I think he's going to have the opportunity. As you mentioned, the numbers when it matters the most being as they are, the possibility of winning a 3rd consecutive Stanley Cup and being the main driving force, I think, behind that is certainly a step in the right direction. And he's only 27 years old. If he continues on this path, he's going to have a resume that can compare to pretty much anyone's. And right now, I think if he ended his career after a 3rd straight Stanley Cup this year, I think we could probably just put him in the Hall of Fame whenever he's good and ready. As for the Tampa Bay Lightning, kind of defying expectations a little bit. Like, I did like them over the Leafs. I did pick them over the Florida Panthers. But the way in which that they've gone about, especially the playoff or the series victory over the Florida Panthers, pretty remarkable, because this is a team that we used to like fantasize about how amazing they were from an offensive perspective. And they've kind of changed the way they are. I mean, they just basically turned into a defensive juggernaut, and they stifled what was the highest scoring team throughout the entire regular season. I think they just understand the situation so much more than everybody else and every other team that's in the running. And therefore the advantage they have is just so apparent. And I think they take advantage of the fact that they have this situational know-how. And I think it's opening up for them where they're going to be a heavy favorite in the Eastern Conference Final. And I would take them pretty much against anyone right now in terms of who they might meet in the Stanley Cup Final if they, in fact, get there.
Yeah, one of the other teams that you were feeling pretty strongly about the last time we talked to you was the Colorado Avalanche, and they've been playing great also. Are they still your favorites to make it to the Cup and win it, or has the Lightning's just dominance since winning against the Leafs kind of swayed you a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's probably a coin flip between the two. I almost presume that both of them will get to the Stanley Cup Final, and it would be a sensational Stanley Cup Final. But they're sort of getting over their little bugaboo, their 2nd round bugaboo here against the St. Louis Blues. And I think the Blues had an opportunity, but I think they took their eye off the ball a little bit, and they started chasing Nazem Kadri around, wanting redemption rather than the victory in Game 4, which they needed so bad. I just think Colorado is probably a step ahead of all the other teams in the Western Conference. If it's Edmonton they meet in the Western Conference Final, assuming both those teams get there, I think they'll have a pretty easy time, because they are not just as talented from a forward perspective, but they have just as much talent on their roster, and they do things like defend and goaltend better than the Edmonton Oilers do. So I think we're on a collision course between what was, the team that was this dominant offensive force and the team that sort of took that mantle from them in the Colorado Avalanche being the next best team from an offensive perspective. I think these two teams are going to collide when it's all said and done, and it should be an awesome, as I mentioned, Stanley Cup Final if that in fact happens.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
No doubt about it. I talked about the Lightning out the gate, and obviously their 1st round series sent the Toronto Maple Leafs back home packing. And, we talked just a few weeks ago about how, you thought this was a prime opportunity, one of the best Maple Leafs teams that, you've seen throughout your lifetime. Where does that, crushing 7-game 1st round series loss kind of leave the Maple Leafs moving forward? Obviously, they still have one of the best young stars in the league in Austin Matthews, but is this a window that is closed? Do you think this is still a franchise moving forward that can continue to compete, hopefully for Stanley Cups?
Yeah, I think it's last dance territory in some respects for this team, but it's not really about Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. I think it's more about the management team that's continuing to build a team around them. Next year is a big year. I mean, every year we end the Leafs season being like, oh, the next year's the biggest year. But there are some other things that are sort of percolating or simmering underneath the surface, one of which being that Austin Matthews can begin to negotiate the terms on his next contract next summer. And if they do have another first round defeat, or if they don't make the playoffs, or if it's a catastrophe again, they can't run it back with the same management team, because they have just made their bed with their current structure, and they are just going to roll it back every opportunity they get. And conveniently, Kyle Dubas, the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, his contract expires at the end of next year. So I think you want to be in a good position organizationally when you're trying to sign the biggest contract in the franchise's history, which will be Austin Matthews' next contract. Him leaving in free agency in 2 years would be an absolute nightmare for the franchise. And if they're in a complete disarray next year and Austin Matthews has all the leverage in the world to negotiate his next contract, but doesn't like the new regime coming in or doesn't trust Kyle Dubas anymore, I think that's a really, really dangerous situation to be in. I don't know if it's untenable, but it'll be a dangerous one, and one that they were going to have to delicately work around. So I think this is a big year. It's probably the last chance Kyle Dubas has, and it's the last chance for this team as it currently stands, both from a roster and management standpoint, to actually get it done. So it is a big year coming up for the Maple Leafs, but they should be just as good as they were this year.
No doubt.
Yeah, and I mean, along with Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, obviously another young superstar. I mean, what McDavid is doing in these NHL playoffs is taking his whole game to another level. Talk about what he's doing and why it's so special. And you already said Edmonton looks like they'll probably make it to the conference finals. What do you expect out of McDavid once he gets to that stage?
Yeah, and it's got to be on the back of him. I mean, in Game 4, they got a big victory with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins scoring twice, and Leon Draisaitl, I think, had a game-high 3 points. But a quiet night for McDavid was still 2 points. Through 10 games, he had the most points through 10 games to start a playoffs, other than Gretzky and Lemieux. They're the only two players that had more to start a postseason run, which is absolutely unbelievable. And the game has changed so much where you shouldn't be able to do that. You shouldn't be able to lug a team all by yourself through 2 rounds of the postseason, but we've seen him just take his game to another level. And that's the criticism around the league of a lot of young players, that they're just not able to elevate. They're not able to overcome the systems that tend to work more often than not in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But situationally, it's favored McDavid. I mean, the Calgary Flames defense core is pretty banged up and pretty limited as is. And of course, the LA Kings weren't like a great team. So McDavid has the opportunity to feast on 2 probably lesser competitors, given like what everybody else is dealing with, but still you can't really quibble with what he's doing. He's an absolute monster. He's the best player in the world. He's the most advanced hockey player of all time. He is that much better than everybody else. And I'm glad that a lot of people are getting to see this play out in real time, because if there's been one thing missing from the Stanley Cup playoffs in recent history, it's the best player in the world playing meaningful games. That is so important from a branding, from an advert. Like, it all is just immensely important to have the best players involved when it matters the most. And we're seeing the best player in the world raise his game to heights that we've never seen. And it's been a treat to watch.
It's exciting stuff, no doubt.
The
Rangers, Hurricanes are tied at 2-2 right now with Game 5 set for Thursday night. I know you thought perhaps the Bruins would be here in place of the Hurricanes, if I remember that correctly. But What have you seen so far through 4 games of this series? Who do you expect to kind of come out on top? And how much do you give the winner of this series a chance to make some noise in the conference finals?
Yeah, it's a weird series. It's probably the most, it is. It's the most boring series for sure. And it's just basically been a battle of home ice. Like, Carolina has won their first 6 games at home and lost their first 6 games, I think, on the road as well. Or I guess 5 games. Like, it's unbelievable how they can't reproduce what they do at home on the road. And a lot of it is to do with the fact that they're kind of facing a mirror match here with a team that just defends really well and has a great goaltender, or maybe the best goaltender other than Vasilevskiy in Igor Igor Shesterkin. So they're kind of just running into the same wall here. And Carolina does have home ice advantage. And if they continue to win on home ice, they will be in the Eastern Conference Final. But I feel like these two teams are just not at the level as Tampa Bay. From an offensive standpoint, they're not going to be able to threaten Tampa. And I just, as much as they can, defend really, really well in a competition of that sort of structure. I just don't see Carolina or New York being able to overcome Tampa Bay. I think I might give the edge now to New York. I did take Carolina coming into the series, but I just get the feeling that once you blow so many opportunities to take advantage and take control of a series, that you might run out of opportunity. And I feel like Carolina might be trending towards that with Igor Shesterkin finding his game and New York having a little bit more life after leaving Carolina initially down 0-2.
I agree. I think Igor is going to be the difference in the series, and he's going to be the reason why the Rangers end up hanging on for sure. I agree there. Go ahead, though, Matt.
Absolutely. And I mean, Justin, this is going to be my last question for you, but you already talked about it. You made us some money on that Tampa Bay Lightning bet for the first round. And since you're back on, we got to re-up this and try and make some more. So what are some bets that you're looking at and some stuff that you would be interested in heading into, the conference finals and the end of the second round?
Yeah, I think you got to look at the Conn Smythe market right now. And it, you could consider Connor McDavid, because this is the one opportunity for a player to win it despite not being on the winning team. That is very rare, but with the numbers he's putting up, I think it is possible. If they played at Carolina in the Stanley Cup final, Carolina won, I could definitely see McDavid taking it. But I circled two guys, Cale Makar and Andrei Vasilevskiy. Cale Makar, as someone who votes on NHL awards, I won't be voting on the Conn Smythe, but I know the voters, and I know NHL voters will want to vote for Cale Makar if the Colorado Avalanche win the Stanley Cup. He is just almost as aesthetically pleasing as Connor McDavid. He's an unbelievable defenseman who does it all, and I'm sure he will get most of the recognition for Colorado's run. While Andrei Vasilevskiy speaks for himself. If the Tampa Bay Lightning get there and win, no one on Tampa Bay has a resume quite like Vasilevskiy's right now. And they are more of a win by committee sort of team, where it's one player is the hero offensively one night, one player the next night. Andrei Vasilevskiy is the constant on that team. So I'd be looking at Andrei Vasilevskiy and Cale Makar. It's more valuable to go the Conn Smythe route if you're confident in one team. If you're confident in Tampa, go Vasilevskiy. If you're confident in Colorado, I'd look towards Cale Makar. Those are the two I'd be circling right now.
That makes sense. I ain't missing out twice, because last time you came here, you made people some money if they really tuned in and whatnot. So we love it. We love it. That's all we got for you, though, Justin. Thanks again so much for joining us, and go follow Justin's great work on Twitter and at Yahoo Sports. But that's going to do it for us. For Scott Proctor, Matt Morris, our guy, Justin Cuthbert. See you on the next episode of Simple Questions.